Right Corner YouTube channel. You are back again for the Zamzim political updates. What are Zimbabwean politicians saying on X space, formerly Twitter? What is happening in and outside Zimbabwe? Unfiltered information and updates, reporting it as it is here on the Right Corner YouTube channel. Getting into business straight. In yet another controversial move, President Emerson Mnangagwa has published an extraordinary government gazette, exempting the newly renamed Sovereign Wealth Fund from complying with the Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. Public procurement is a major arena of corruption, as the news was posted on their X account. And also the government, this new law brings the government into question accountability of our Mutapa investment fund and how public money will be protected from looters. Ownership of 20 state-owned companies has already been transferred to the Mutapa fund, and these companies include National Railways, Air Zimbabwe, Net1, Tel1, among others. However, the ex-minister Kasukuwere, who was barred from running for president in the just ended election, says the Mutapa Sovereign Wealth Fund and a decree by President Mnangagwa exempting nearly 24 companies from public procurement procedures is a brazen abuse of power and shows ZANU-PF leader lacks probity. This was Asevia Kasukuwere. Let's get into detail of what Asevia Kasukuwere said in a statement. Asevia Kasukuwere urged Zimbabweans to not to follow Mnangagwa'S exemption of the Mutapa Fund from procurement procedures. Former Minister Asevia Kasukuwere has kind of criticized President Emerson Mnangagwa, not kind of, but actually criticized President Emerson Mnangagwa's for exempting 20 companies under the Mutapa Sovereign Wealth Fund from public procurement procedures. Kasukuwere believes this is a clear abuse of power and demonstrates a lack of integrity of the part of the ZANU-PF leader. In a statement, he calls upon all Zimbabweans who care about the country's future to send a strong message to the president. He also expressed concern about the personalization and misuse of state assets at the expense of citizens. Kasukuwere said, Mnangagwa's presidential decrees open door to massive state asset looting. The recent renaming of the Sovereign Wealth Fund into the so-called Mutapa Fund by a presidential decree and the subsequent transfer of selected state enterprises into the fund has shocked many and naturally attracted serious concern regarding the motives behind such a brazen move, especially without the consent of Parliament, which is due to convene and is meant to protect the interests of citizens. Further to that, there is the recent promulgation, again by a presidential decree, of a new statutory instrument that seeks to exempt the Mutapa Fund from the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act, Chapter 22-23. There is no debate that public procurement procedures and the disposal of public assets have a profound impact on a nation's development trajectory. Any country that wishes to maximize benefits from its assets and resources in a responsible manner and is also serious about accountability and transparency, therefore needs to ensure that it has the appropriate laws, policies and regulations in place to safeguard such public assets and resources from fraud and abuse. To protect state resources or assets from abuse, it is critical that they are comprehensive and binding legal frameworks, effective monitoring and auditing procedures to ensure compliance with their regulations, standard terms and conditions of contracts, improved transparency and public availability of rules governing the process. It is in this spirit that Zimbabwe enacted the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act, Chapter 22-23, whose primary purpose is to provide for the control and regulation of procurement and the disposal of public assets to ensure that such procurement and disposal are conducted in a manner that is transparent, fair, honest, cost-effective, and competitive. The key objectives of this Act are as follows: to ensure that procurement is conducted in a manner that is transparent, fair, honest, cost-effective, and competitive; to promote competition among bidders; to provide for the fair and equitable treatment for all bidders, leading to procurement contracts that represent good value for money; to promote the integrity of and fairness and public confidence in procurement processes; to ensure the implementation of any environment, social, economic, and other policies authorized or required by any law to be taken into account by a law procuring entity in procurement proceedings. And the exemption of any state entity from this Act not only indicates a profound disregard of the interests of citizens at large and the rule of law, but also shows an abhorrence of any accountability or transparency whatsoever by the President. The negative implications of such a move are numerous and mean that those assets clandestinely transferred into the Mutapa Fund are now subject to gross abuse and looting without public disclosure or any recourse. Exempting the fund from such critical oversight means, first, there will be no obligation by the state to follow due processes regarding the procurement of goods and services by the fund, thus exposing it to unmitigated risk. Second, such assets can be disposed of, not necessarily at fair value, and to individuals with close ties without any accountability whatsoever. In short, Zimbabweans have been dispossessed of effective and judicious control of state assets, and Mnangagwa has, in effect, taken full control of them under the Mutapa Fund without being answerable to anyone on how these assets operate or are disposed of in the future. This entrenches only his interest in what are essentially public assets. If this is not a brazen abuse of power and a lack of judgment and probity, what is it? Therefore, it is our considered view that all Zimbabweans who have the future interests of our country at heart must send a clear and unequivocal message to their president. Enough is enough. We cannot sit idly by as state assets are personalized and abused at the expense of citizens. Sokwanile Shakwana. This was the ex-former minister. This was the former minister Xavier Kasukuwere, as he was trying to urge Zimbabweans to not to follow the President Mnangagwa'S exemption of Mutapa Fund from procurement procedures. Let's get to hear what you think about all this. This is the story that has been making headlines all over Twitter, social media platforms. Let's get to hear what do you think.